Ah, there we go. All right, let's get this started, shall we? Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashterothi, and this is the Friday show of Talking in Stations. I am all right. Already trying to, this is my first time as the main host. Please be patient. We're still trying to make sure that everything's right.
Be gentle, folks. Be gentle.
It's not like I'm like a Twitch streamer by trade or anything, whatever. But either way, here we are. It's the end of the week. We're excited, and we have this really cool guest to talk to and some news to get to. But first, let's talk about who we got. We, of course, have Rundle here. How you doing, Rundle?
Great. Hello, fellow New Eden pilots. Friday, indeed it is. Nick Bison, CSM 16, vote soon, vote often.
Vote once. Voter fraud is not a voter fraud is a crime. No. Anyway, so vote once per alt. That's what's important. No. And also, we have Gory Xander, who you may not have ever heard of before because he's kind of a new guy, and that's kind of the point. How you doing, man?
I'm fantastic.
Awesome. Well, we have plenty to talk about with you. Let's go ahead and jump first into the news of the day. And first and foremost, I wanted to talk about the Euro show, not just because this is apparently also the Euro show now. If you're not watching live, you may not get that joke, but I got to catch it today. They actually have it on Tuesdays and Fridays, the same days as my show. And today they were talking about, like the new shooter from CCP, player retention, which is going to be a lot of what we're talking about today with new players, and a lot of interesting stuff with IT security. So that show, which again is like Tuesdays and Fridays in a more EU-friendly time, is an EVE Online show that has more of a general technology bent that often relates to either EVE Online or EVE Online players. So it's a pretty cool show to check out. In addition to that, CCP also did a show today. I think it was today, and has been doing a couple of shows this week. But this week they revealed that their new skin, the Galnet skin, has been given away as part of these CCP streams. There's precedent for this. The old, the original, what was going to be the Crimson Harvest skin, but not the Black Iron, but the red, those dark red skins. I can't remember what they actually ended up being renamed as, but either way, those skins were mostly only given out as like rewards for people that happen to be watching Alliance tournament that year or whatever. And that makes them extremely valuable. One of the most recent skins like that we've gotten was the Scope syndication skins that have now been being given out to streamers as part of the partnership program or other shows or websites or services EVE related, in order to allow them to give away to their followers, monetize how they want to, whatever. It's just part of the partnership program. But these Galnet skins are new, and this is the first time that they started revealing it. And a lot of people are unhappy with the fact that these appear to be going to be super rare skins. How do you guys feel about this kind of stuff?
Well, for me, first, they actually look really kind of neat. And, I think I'm not a big skin hoarder anyways. If what I'm unclear on, maybe you can clear this up, my opinion will change. Is this a skin that you get and now it's tradable and sellable? Or is it one of these, once you redeem it or you're given it, it somehow auto redeems itself and you just kind of get the skin on your account? How are they delivering the skin?
So I haven't looked into this exact one specifically, but if it's like every single other one that they've ever done, what it is that they give you a code and then you redeem that code and then it becomes a skin in your thing. That could theoretically be applied, but let's actually check.
Okay, so so I can kind of, while you're checking on that, I can, if it's a skin that drops and now you have an item in your inventory and you can go and sell it, I'm less excited about that. I think it makes it, a little less important, or like if you're going to give something like that away and you want it to be a very kind of branded item from CCP, because it looks actually really nice. It seems to have the CCP TV logo on it. Tongue twister there. Say that 5 times fast. you know, and you're on a stream and you happen to win, or you're doing something and you get a reward, or whatever the mechanism is that you end up getting this. If it's something you just kind of sell and take the money and run, to me that makes it a little less special. I would prefer if they made you auto redeem it, and now you have to, you have it for a ship. Now, I also understand the challenge that if it redeems it for an Osprey and you're not a Caldari pilot, then, well, shit, what the hell are you going to do with it? I get that too. So,
yeah. So to speak to what you're talking about, so when an item is only receivable through redemption, like for instance, or like if it auto applies in that case, like for instance, for the last several events, there's been skins that are, you don't get the skin to sell. It's now on your thing. But what that means is that the act of having that skin now means something. And I think that that's what you're looking for, is that like, I have, for instance, the Ikitursa casino skin because I went to eVegas, and that's why I applied it. And when I use it, I use that skin almost always. Do I like it? Yes, I think it's a wonderful skin. I think it's pretty. And I think that the Ikitursa has other skins, and I even own them all. But I almost always go with the casino skin because it means something to me. And the fact that anyone else could have just bought it off the market means that I'm not sending the message that I want to be sending with that, right? Like,
precisely.
If the only way to have gotten it was to have gone to that event, then just showing the skin would mean that about me. Just like the proving ground skins are bind on account, because that way, if you see a glorified Kybernaut skin, you know that guy did well in the Abyssing proving conduit. They wanted that to have meaning. The problem here is that a Twitch giveaway is supposed to just, like, you don't know the context in which the person's going to be getting it. So really, in a lot of ways, a Twitch giveaway is just giving somebody a giant pile of ISK or money or whatever, just in a fancy package. So I get why this would be non-redeemable that way, because it's more like this is an opportunity for you to be like, hey guys, I'm showing you this skin to show you that I was super lucky this one day in April 2001. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right.
No, I want 2 billion ISK, man. Like,
yeah,
let me sell it off.
So real quick then, Gory, you're fairly new. We'll get to all your details, but just on a topic like this, like how do skins impact, or how do you see skins as a brand new player?
I mean, a lot of times I just see the skins and I'm fascinated by just the amount of variation that you can kind of do to your ship. But beyond that, I don't know, skins add DPS, right? So that's kind of what I go
nothing.
for.
10% cooler. No, you're 10% faster and more DPS and tank with the skin. It's proven science. Absolutely.
Proven science. Okay.
So
there's a straight up lie.
But it does belie a point, though. Like, first of all, are you a skin guy at all? Like, have you even thought about it or looked into skins at all?
I've always I've always liked the customization aspect of skins in really any game. So I thought that doing or getting into skins in this game would be cool, just so I can kind of stand out above the rest. As for getting an exclusive skin, I feel like that, as you said, it does kind of mean a bit more that someone looks at you and they're like, wow, that guy did that thing. Or you know yourself, even like, I got to do this awesome thing. This ship skin is a reminder that that's how I got it.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So that actually brings up an interesting question about all this, which is the primary complaint about that's kind of coming out of this, or that I've seen about this, which is that there's a lot of inconsistency of the value of a skin versus the cost of a skin, right? Like, there are plenty of skins that are very plain Jane, but are worth a ton of ISK just because they were so rare or they were released a while ago or whatever. I personally like the fact that each skin kind of has a story, but at the same time, there's no way for a person who doesn't already know the story to recreate the story besides, like, asking me. Because, like, who else is paying attention to the origin of every single skin as they're being released, right? Like, so I feel like there's a lot of texture to skins that get lost, and then new players go and experience it, and what they experience is, oh, cool, I'm going to go through the process of selecting what skin I want. Oh, this one seems like a pretty simple one. Why is this really simple skin 3 billion ISK? This is stupid. Have you encountered that at all?
I absolutely have. I was actually looking at skins. I want to say in yesterday's stream, and it was I was dumbfounded to see that there was like a 20 billion skin for the Gila that I was flying, and I was just so confused as to why it was, because honestly, I didn't even like the skin, which feels bad, but
right.
Yeah, it was overly priced,
and that's because the price of it is often way more about how it was distributed than about how much demand there is for it or whatever.
Yeah, when it comes to skins, I always like to say, the first one's okay, the second one's okay, the third one's okay, but that next one is the most important one.
Well, either way, it appears as if you're interested in getting these Galnet skins, you should definitely go and follow CCP and check out their streams when they go live. They've been doing it a lot, and they're obviously trying to promote this. So hopefully what they'll do is their instinct should be to give away more of them. So that way you don't have to be on the stream and lucky, but just, almost anybody who's participating in the stream at any given time might have a pretty reasonable chance of getting them. So that way you don't feel like you can't get them without being like super lucky or whatever.
I can't believe the audience, no one bid on my joke. That's just, I'm sad now that no one went for the joke. That's all right. We'll move on.
Yep. All right. So we have a shout out that I'm going to read just because I don't really fully understand it. And this is what I do when I don't fully understand things. I just read it word for word. After a 10-year hiatus, Huzzah Federation, a PvP alliance that used to live in Syndicate Nullsec, is back and looking to welcome any old Huzzah Federation corps or capsuleers back into the family. Contact the alliance or Viperus directly in-game. I have been assured that is not an ad. It is news, so we're going to just go with that. Now, do you have anything? Have you figured out anything about this yet besides that?
No, not yet. No other feedback. I reached out to some of the people to try to say, like, is there the significance, because Huzzah was, like a big faction group, or they were significant area. I recognize the name, like from back when 10 years ago, wasn't that long ago, Syndicate, but I don't understand other than I recognize the name. But hey, shout out, welcome back. I could say the same with AAA. We did the same with AAA. They took some SOV, they kind of returned out of nowhere and seems to be pushing back. So it's nice to see the old names come back. So shout out to Huzzah and AAA and anyone else who's making a resurgence back into the game. Lots of opportunity, as we know, in various locations in Nullsec. Lots of turmoil, lots of change. So if you're listening and you're like, I want to recover my old alliance, maybe now is a good time. I don't know.
Yeah, Huzzah Federation. I actually, you're right. I just fully processed what even this is saying. So after 10 years of hiatus. And that's actually really interesting, because as much as we talk about doom and gloom about EVE, we see a lot of people who have quit the game in the last decade deciding that now is the time to come back, as if there was something that made them not want to play before that they feel is better now. And that might be worth noting too. So as we talk about all these alliances, or CCP's decisions killing off an alliance or something like that, let's remember that we actually have people rebuilding the old ones as well, which is pretty cool. Anywho, okay, so the next other bigger topic for tonight is there is a bit of a consternation going on in Providence. And so when we last were, last week I think it was, there was that big event in Amamaki, right?
Amamaki, yeah. Or Secede, when Amamaki, I think. Yeah, not Secede. Secede was, there was something that happened to Secede last 4 or 5 days as well, but Amamaki is the one I think you're referencing. Yeah.
So the point is that Wrecking Crew and Dreadbomb attempted to attack a Deep Star, and rather than that going totally normal, as a normal shield timer was, the trap was sprung, and they got bloodied pretty bad, right? So that's what happened last week. So now the new accusation is that there's a bit of a scheme going on in Providence. So Providence had some of the most structures during the outpost changeover, and famously, actually, right before the changeover happened, tests swooped through and took it, and therefore held the vast majority of these incredibly valuable, rare impossible to get otherwise Fortizars. And, they've moved some away, they've sold them and all those sorts of stuff. But, and even beyond that, more structures have been built out in Providence. And Providence in general has this not read, don't shoot philosophy that the people that live there often try to adhere to on one level or another, right? It's always kind of that region that anybody could go into.
Not just in the past anyways, right? So right. Not so much now under the group.
Right, but there still were, the concept was somewhat preserved in the fact that there's all of these free ported Fortizars and other structures. Right. So that way people who want to live in Providence but not be part of a large organization to do so can still do so. Well, here's the problem. They changed the structure mechanics such that if a structure goes into low power for more than 7 days, it goes into an abandoned state, which means if it gets destroyed, asset safety doesn't go to the nearest station. It actually just drops it directly on grid. And so terrible people like myself have been running around in HiSec, and if anybody let their structures go abandoned, we take their stuff. And that's cool, right? That's a way, and I can justify that because it went abandoned. Someone will come and to kill it like within the next hour and then take it. So it might as well be me. But what we're seeing here is a tactic that I always suspected that we would start to see, but now that we've started to see it, I'm actually more interested in the player's reaction to it. So the scheme is that RC and them purchased or coerced, somehow acquired these Fortizars from Vili. And now that they have them, they have pulled the fuel with no warning or no notice in order to make their own structure go abandoned. So that way they can loot the stuff from all of the people who have left stuff in there, but like they're AFK at the moment or whatever, because it's a free port. So for years, people have been building stuff up in there, and they're going to be able to get all of it. And this is a mechanic that the abandonment structures system has absolutely provided for from the beginning. In fact, I was suspecting that at some point we might see nullsec groups like choke out a region enough to force structures to go abandoned just so that they could loot them. But there's a lot of problems with that, with the fact that you can basically fuel it indefinitely. So it's harder to siege in that way. But in this case, if you already own the structure, you can pull the fuel whenever you want.
Just yank it out of there. Yeah, for reference, for those people who don't know who Vili is basically the head of test and one of the big blocks in nullsec, part of Legacy, part of PAMFAM, and on the other side of the war. And so there's a whole lot of space in the south, and Providence is in the southern area as well. So just for some context.
Right. And so because of who's involved, there's obviously all of these interesting accusations about the fact that like it's about raising money, or like, oh, Vili needs money for the, that's why he was able to be forced to do that, or, convinced to do this, or, RC is only doing this because they lost so poorly to Snuff. And so now they have to raise more money to be able to keep fighting. Whatever. I don't care about that. What I'm interested actually in is people's response to this, because this behavior is being framed and kind of agreed on collectively as being just as bad as any of the terrible things that we think of as being terrible, like comparing this to being just like Snuff, right? Like, and so I find it very interesting how defensive the player base is to people who are away from the game, especially when it comes to player structures.
In essence, stealing from players who are taking a sabbatical or aren't able to play on a regular basis. Clearly, there's going to be a large number of those. And so they're not in a defendable state. I think that's the crux of why people are kind of up in arms. You're picking on people who can't defend themselves in this context.
Hey, Skyhawk, if you want to give me your version of it, I would love to know that. I literally only know you are correct. So Skyhawk in the chat is saying, I love you, man, and what you do. This is not at all an accurate description of what happened at all. You guys are only repeating what stuff and what other people have been spinning. And I just want to directly address that and say, first of all, I appreciate being called out that way, honestly, because accuracy is very important. But the other piece to this is that there's almost no way to cover these kinds of events without having that kind of reaction being triggered. So all I can do is say, if there's another way of looking at it, please let me know, and I'll be willing to give that coverage as well.
So the reactions, the audience are having kind of both sides, right? One, hey, it's the news is inaccurate is one valid response, right? Another one is, hey, look, it's Griff says it's a pretty shitty way to do business, and people remember. And in true fashion, Eve fashion, people do remember. There are very long memories in this game.
Right. So, and this is something I've definitely argued with people about more than almost anything else, because from my experience, and this is just from my memory, because I was there at Eve Vegas when Citadels was announced, and had conversations with CCP Fozzie that day because of my concerns about it, and other people's. And I remember what was being talked about during that time, and the idea that CCP was tempting people to or convincing people that if you put stuff in a player structure, it's going to be safe no matter what all the time. I never got that impression. And it was weird to me because I always felt it as everyone knew that asset safety was more or less a violation, and that there's always calls for it to be ended. And then as soon as the process of doing that started, that's when this big defensive or this big concern for players that are AFK started to come into play. And the reason why I'm trying to figure this out is because I don't want to just be Snidely Whiplash justifying the bad guy stuff. If this is truly something that the entire zeitgeist, I guess my question, what I said before the show is what surprises me isn't that this is happening. It's that this is the thing that suddenly we have space Bushido over. Right? Suddenly we care about whether or not somebody is a nasty because they took something from somebody who quit the game. When normally, when somebody quits the game, you literally say, can I have your stuff? So I'm not saying that the reaction that the player base is giving is wrong either. I'm just saying this is probably why CCP is kind of blindsided by this reaction, because for years, the player base gave basically the exact opposite feedback about the matter.
Yep. Well, and lots of interesting stuff. Genghis, his Mr. Munchin, okay, maybe name, something like that. Anyways, Gang has got a really good point, I think. Hey, look, before even stations or your Citadels came along, man, if you were in a station and your stuff could be locked in a station because you were hell camped and there's no way to get it out, or it just, you had something in an NPC station deep in nullsec somewhere, and somehow you got your clone killed, or you went on vacation for 2 months and the whole political arena around you changed, and you're like, shit, now I can't get anywhere near there to get any of my stuff out. I might get an interceptor, or maybe I might get one ship out, but so on the other hand, this is Eve, and don't leave your shit laying around.
Yeah. And I guess I would have expected the player base, I get the fact that it was a surprise that now things are no longer safe in structures indefinitely. But the fact that the player base seems to continue to hold on to the idea that it should, that people that are AFK should somehow be protected, even if they don't take any precautions to make themselves prepared or anything like that. And I suspect that part of this is because we can all see ourselves in that, right? Everybody has to go AFK sometimes. And so it's easy to kind of see yourself in that scenario. And so it's easy to say hey, wait a minute, that's not fair. As opposed to in other situations where you're a ganker and you gank a highsecker and he complains because highsec isn't safe enough and so quit, and you go HTFU. Yep. You don't see yourself in their place in the same way that you can see yourself in the place of somebody who went AFK and then their structure got ripped apart.
For sure. So I think the audience is kind of zeroing in, I think, on what is driving the core response, right? That deep response is this idea of fairness and the idea of safety, right? And in Eve, one of the first things you learn in Eve is nothing is safe. Nothing really is concrete. And when you lose it, it can be gone. And no matter what you put, nowhere, anywhere, you could lose it other than putting it in a high-sec system in a station. That's about the only level of safety you get.
Right.
And you could still lose it on the market, or if you do something by trying to transport it. The moment you take it out of there, you're in deep shit. So this idea of fairness, which Eve has kind of always walked the fine line, the fairness fine line. What is truly considered fair, and what is considered safe? I think that's the real, consternation of the opinions on either side.
Right. And I guess my final thought on this matter is that regardless of what we believe about it, it's important to keep in mind what we know that CCP thinks about it. And CCP Hilmar has been very clear that he feels that any asset safety whatsoever, and in fact, the non-destructibility of NPC structures, he refers to that as a violation. So if he got his way, you would get a patch note that someday that says that NPC structures are also going to be destroyed. And so your stuff may not necessarily even be safe there ever. So I guess if anyone has ever led to you to believe that, like, don't undock what you're not afraid to lose also means that if you don't undock, it's safe, that is a temporary condition. Everything in Eve is ephemeral.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay.
We wound up a few people in the audience. That's good. So,
yeah, so I do want to circle back on what Skyhawk said.
Sure.
He said, so with it turning into a big source of drama, the owners were directed to no longer have it be a free port. A Dreadbomb member offered to buy it, as the owner no longer wanted to own it, so it wasn't going to be a free port. That new purchaser who then gave the entirety of RC a ping with a warning to move their stuff out. I think that's the end of his story. So yeah, and that's very, very possible, right? Like, somebody could have seen, because even the accusations on Reddit was more like, I've seen this thing, it's a plot, I'm revealing it. So like, it could be somebody trying to make it seem more untoward than it was, although we'll just know. I mean, like, the proof is in the pudding. Either the structure goes abandoned and they smash it or not. My point was more about how the player base feels about the relationship of abandoned structures, and the opinion that having a free port out there as like a honeypot in order to make it go abandoned and then destroy it, so that way you could harvest the stuff that people left in there thinking it was an okay place to put it, that feels like just as valid of an Eve thing as somebody who puts a courier contract to a structure knowing that they can shut it off, or knowing that they can kill you on the way there, or something like that. Like, and I guess that's the part that surprised me, was because I'd actually considered this several times, where it's like, oh man, we should drop a free port in like areas, main mission hubs and other stuff like that, and just let it be there and like offer it as a service for like a year or two, and then one day, just without any warning, pull the fuel and hit it. But part of that's because I've seen how lucrative knocking over abandoned structures can be. But I would have always considered that to be a clever tactic, and yet the word I've heard is evil. Like, that makes me the same as Snuff, that I even think that that's funny. And that's the part that I find more interesting than whether or not RC is really doing it.
Yeah, there's a comment just have it is a form of AWOXing in a way, right? And AWOXing in general is a looked down upon activity. AWOXing, for those people who don't know, is the process of attacking and killing and destroying the assets of a friend, usually a ship or a player that's blue to you, or sometimes in fleet, but generally blue, right? A corp mate or someone, right, just because he pissed you off, or
you're a traitor,
or you're a traitor or whatever, right? So it's tend to be looked down. So I think, anyways, before we move on, I think this is a good thing to maybe continue the discussion over on the Talking Stations Discord. I'm going to post the link for that. I think because there's lots of opportunity, and maybe the listeners can get a few of their thoughts together and then come type out some stuff. And Ash, you can then take some more time to really work through the feelings of some people. Sure. I know I think that's maybe a great place to do that. Unless you have some more to talk about on this.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. When I said this extreme position, I say it because I want somebody to debate it with me. Like, if you have a sound counterpoint, I'd love to hear it. And that's one of the great things about Talking Stations. So both, just like how, we live read out the other side of the narrative or whatever, like, the whole point here is that, like, we want to make this a place where people share ideas. So please, by all means, if you've got an idea that you want to share, hop on into the TIS Discord and begin sharing it. All right, let's see. Any other news before we jump into the interview? We have,
couple quick items, maybe.
Things blowing up. There was a big fight in Phaeobolis.
Yep. Looks like the Army of Mango, Legion of Excess Death, Nvidia Glory, Victus Razor. They kind of counterattacked, rose up, had a fight with the Imperium and the Allies. Obviously, the Imperium and Allies, Wrecking Crews, some of those people are moving into the Fayth area. And so there seems to have been another battle in RIT TAC A7. Looks like there was about 29 billion ISK loss in the fight, about 250 pilots. So that's an interesting location. It is kind of deep in the south region of Null, and in essence, has more or less Pappy. I say we because I'm on the Pappy side, but in essence, those people and more or less have moved out. So there was a very clear decision. I don't know why or how, but it seems like there was a pretty good fight that went on earlier on, and so maybe we can try and get some more details as to, is it a true counter attack? Is it a counter offensive? Was it just a good fight? We'll try and find out some more information on that. But
yeah, this appears to be part of the Imperium and Allies strategy to, while fighting the direct Pappy, like Marauder burning everything crowd directly, is not where they're going with it. They do have their secondary teams running ramp shot over any of Pappy's allies or softer targets or, revenue areas or anything like that. So
for sure,
I believe this is part of that effort to just
on the Imperium side, for sure.
Yep. To maximize that damage.
Yep. What's interesting is the counteroffensive and the number of ships that the Pappy side, that side massed and had a counter fight, right? As opposed to just, the doors open. My alliance was in Fayth, and honestly, we're moving one day and out we went, and there was no defense fleets anymore, and the structures were just there. We tried to take what we could out of there, but a lot of it we basically wrote it off.
What was the objective of this fight?
A RIT A7, in terms of the objective.
Was it a Sov fight, or was it Sovwanding, or like?
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. I'm trying to find that out. Give me a second here.
Yeah, knowing the results of it would be interesting. In addition to this, there was 2 Keepstars killed today. The second Keepstar timer, a Rockwall, was docked in the Keepstar and attempted to pick up the core and fit before the attackers would be able to do so. I'm guessing by the fact that this news report says attempted, it didn't go well. But yeah, more Keepstars are dying. And so is everything else. In HoboLeaks news, we did get a small update in HoboLeaks, and it reveals a little bit more about some sort of future event, probably the next thing that's going to happen. This doesn't look like it's going to be one of the events like the Easter event or something that we would expect. This is closer to a lore event. The main focuses that I've seen so far is rogue drones, Tempest Dragonars, and Edencom. There's a lot of rogue drone structures and facilities. It looks like the rogue drones are going to be the primary element in this fight. But interestingly enough, the Caldari ships are registered and said to be part of the Tempest Dragonars, which are the terrorist organization that were, have popped in and out of Caldari history. Most recently, they were the ones that were working with Sancha during the Dragonar Blitz event, not last January, but January, a year ago, January. And so whatever the next beat is going to be, the fact that the Tempest Dragonars are involved may relate to that, if that makes sense, because otherwise we don't know much about what they've been up to since Typhus Heth got taken out of power. The final piece, though, is there is a couple of things. There's an Edencom Gunstar that was added, which is sort of odd because there's literally already an Edencom Gunstar. So that implies to me that this might be like a copy over that they're going to change in some way, like to a different template. But the one right after it is named Edencom Station. And there's no other descriptions or anything else to that. So it would appear as if CCP is starting to put the pieces in place for the quote-unquote next thing. So get hyped. But other than that, I don't have anything too discreet, except for the one thing I will say is that the next, we'll talk about this a little bit, or we can talk about this at the end too, but the next Abyss PvP, not this week, but next week, is going to be Navy frigates. So.
Ooh, fun. I did, just going back, winding up a little bit on that RIT TAC A7.
Yes.
It looks like it was either over SOV or a station, most likely SOV. It looks like the Huzzah hub was reinforced, but it's still under NVIDIA Glory Comes, and they've held that SOV since 2018. So my guess is, without just kind of reading the tea leaves here, that was probably an attempt at some sort of SOV warfare, either a station or the iHub or TCU or something was going on there. So.
Well, either way, it looks like the attackers took a pretty darn big toll out of the defenders, and it maybe they didn't even, or they also took the objective. So,
yep,
looks like a victory for them.
Exactly.
All right, I think that's it for news. Should we transition?
Absolutely. I think our guest has patiently been waiting. A bunch of people in channel are like, "Who's the guy with the mustache?" Well, let's find out, shall we? So on the show tonight, I think so. We got to give a little shout out to Trash Talk Tuesday, to Redline. He after one of the Trash Talk Tuesdays was like, "Hey, we're gonna raid this guy," and
yes.
We raided him. This person here, Gory Xander, and I think it was like day 2 or day 3 or something.
Yeah, it was day 2.
Day 2, yeah, and. So, I'd like to say that we scrubbed the EVE universe for a real live new player, but he kind of just fell in our laps here. And so I've been watching his streams, and I thought, hey, you know what? Let's have him on the show and talk about a real new player experience from a brand new player. So, Gory, you want to introduce yourself, give us a little background, and then we'll just kind of start firing some questions at you. Maybe tell us a little bit about what kind of games you played before, and then what brought you to EVE, how you got started, and some general impressions. Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Gory Xander. I stream really regularly. I just recently started playing EVE. I think I'm on my 11th day now, or yesterday was my 11th day. So I'm fresh out of the waters in terms of EVE, and still very much so finding my feet in this game. I don't know. I've for the most part, as far as like my stream goes, I've done that for a few years and off and on. And I think that I've just been trying to find out what I actually want to do. And now that I can't stop playing EVE, I think I'm kind of stuck here. So you guys are stuck with me.
Yeah, what games were you playing before?
I was playing anything from like first-person shooters. You have your common ones like Call of Duty. I have a lot of Overwatch under my belt, a lot of StarCraft and World of Warcraft. Beyond that, I just kind of play whatever I'm feeling at the time. Like anything from Elder Scrolls Online to, I don't know, Hollow Knight, really.
Well, now you play EVE.
Now you play. You have graduated. Congratulations.
You found the real game. No, but that is actually an interesting question, because one of the things that I talk about, or I think about a lot, and I talk to people about a lot, is just the difference between the experience of streaming EVE versus any other gamer. So, anytime I talk to somebody who comes from a different, or any other game, anytime I talk from somebody who comes from a different environment that then comes to be an EVE streamer, what was your biggest impressions? What sort of feelings did you get? What was your biggest takeaways about that transition? I'm sure you've transitioned between a lot of different games. You try out a lot of different games. Was the transition to EVE different than anything else? How did that come out?
Aside from the immediate support from the community, like I said, day 2 I got raided with quite a large raid, but I've had nothing but good support from the community. A lot of other times, especially coming from World of Warcraft or even Dark Souls, which was a game I streamed quite a lot of, I always found the community to be somewhat toxic or had a lot of toxic tendencies. Whereas here, on day 3, I think because of Redline and his raid and several very, very kind viewers, I had 4 billion ISK and was set up with Omega, and I didn't even know what to do with myself. So the support from this community has blown me away, and really outdoes any other streaming community that I've been a part of.
Yeah.
Have you run into any particular challenges about streaming Eve versus other games?
As far as streaming, no. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. I have never before felt scared to stream a game. Like this game, I feel like I get hunted down, or I could be hunted down rather. And a couple times it's been made obvious that that is possible, in that I finished an Abyssal yesterday or the day before, and one of my viewers warped in right as I came out just to kind of like say, "Hey, I know where you are." And then yesterday, I unfortunately died in Abyssal, and someone paid the difference. That was my ship, which was super kind. But they said I was going to pay for your ship anyway because I was going to kill you when you came out of the Abyssal. So,
yeah, stream snipers is what they're called.
Yeah, it's exactly. Good.
That is one of the things that, like, again, I've been kind of musing about this a lot recently. The Eve Twitch experience is different than other games because, you know, other games try to find gimmicky ways for you to maybe interact with the streamer in the game in some way. In Eve, it's impossible not to. The act of watching a streamer play Eve is playing Eve because we're in the same universe, we're having the same experience, and any one of your viewers can at any time decide that they want to become a more direct component of your stream. And I think that gives an intimacy and it's like it's in a weird way the perfect game for Twitch, but also the worst game for Twitch for the same reason.
So I just want to back up to how the hell did you get into Eve? Like, did you just wake up one morning and be like, I want to try the world's greatest game, or did the friend
nice.
Did the friend invite you, or what? How did like?
Well, so I had been interested in Eve in a long time. My first introduction was actually seeing it in my local news. Well, at the time I was living in Los Angeles, so the Los Angeles News was doing a piece on a massive battle that was going on with, like, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of players. And I was like, man, this game sounds insane. Like that, there's no way that a server could handle that, let alone a game could have players that could, you know, come to that scale. The closest thing I could think of is, like, you know, like the first big raid in World of Warcraft. Like that's the closest thought that I have to that kind of community gathering. And when it came to trying to experience that, I was like, you know what, like that's actually really intimidating. So I'm not super interested in trying because it's a bit much for me at the time, because I wasn't really dedicated to playing a whole lot of games. And then my wife actually started watching a streamer, which I unfortunately have forgotten which one. But she was watching a streamer 2 weeks ago, and I was like, you know what, Eve actually looks like a lot of fun. And so I thought I'd download it and launch it and see if I enjoyed it as well. And like I said, I've not been able to stop playing. If I'm not streaming it and working, I'm playing Eve.
So those first few days, so give it just kind of your own impression. You launch Eve, you start out the character creation screen. Can you remember what you felt, or can you give us any feedback? You know, we always talk about the newbro experience, and we always, because people make alts and stuff, and we go through it and we're like, hey, this is clearly what they must be thinking. But could you help us give us some insight into really what the hell you were thinking?
Yeah, well, with the first, like, initial steps, I was looking at like the character selection. You have your different factions to start with, or races, I suppose. And like I was reading through them, and of course, kind of being like me streamer, I was like, oh, like I'm going to be part of the big corporation, you know, government kind of thing. That, you know, the Caldari sound really intriguing because they're all, you know, all corporation all the time. And so I ended up siding with the Caldari to start with, and like I thought, oh man, this is going to have like a big impact. And then I was like, oh, I get to pick what kind of Caldari I am, thinking that, again, that would have a big impact. And then you start off with this tutorial, which I thought was kind of boring, actually. The tutorial was a little boring. I felt like I had to try to keep myself engaged. So I kind of at that point was a little worried. But then once I got through the tutorial, I was like, okay, so they kind of just threw me out here. They didn't really tell me anything. But from that, I realized that my starting choice actually didn't really matter because I can go anywhere and I could be like any faction ships. I had an open world sandbox on my hands that I wasn't told anything about.
Yeah, that's a problem that I've heard a lot, which is the idea that like the very first decisions that you're asked to make in Eve, you then turn around and learn that none of them mattered, which teaches the new player that their decisions don't matter. And it actually isn't necessarily the right lesson to teach. But at the same time, whenever CCP has tried to move that racial selection process later in not do the avatar first, that apparently also seriously hurts retention. You want to build your character before you get introduced your spaceship. But it's also worth noting that the MPE changes a lot, right? So chances are you actually experience an MPE that none of us actually have. So not just what did it feel like, but like mechanically, what were the first few beats? Once you've made your character, like what was the new player experience for you? Like actually the experience itself.
I don't know. I suppose it's it's a little hard to say. Other than like coming out of the tutorial, I think that the biggest thing was trying to decide, or rather figure out what to do next, to the point of like I don't even know how to use the UI. I was looking at, I was like, oh, click on the agents to figure out what to do. And I clicked on the agents and I was like, sweet, that didn't actually tell me what to do. So then I think that the biggest part of the new player experience for me was getting over that initial bit of confusion. And then with that, again, I can thank the community a lot, because even without the raid, I had people coming into my stream basically saying like, hey, if you're trying to do more tutorial content, or at least something that's close to tutorial content, do the career agents. And that like pointed me in the direction of, okay, so this is how I'm going to get started. And then following through with those, it taught me more. But again, it's all kind of it's self-inferred what you learn. I think that it's not actually told in the game properly.
Right. So when you very first came in, though, was there any UI at all?
No. So when you first come in, it's completely empty.
Yeah,
and then,
that's the case.
And then it exposes you to the elements one at a time, right?
Yeah.
Was that boring? What was that? How did that play out to you? That's actually the part that I'm very curious about, because that's one of the things that has changed the most recently.
Right. And I think that could be part of it that I did find boring, or at least not engaging, was that it was like, okay, here's this one item, and now you know how to do this one item, and let me talk to you in my plain robot voice that this is another item that you can do. And and in being told in such like a stale way that these are interface items, I was like, okay, this is unengaging at best. And then I realized that there's like towards the end of the tutorial, you're kind of like, okay, there's more to do in the game than initially was like let out, because they didn't show you much. And then by the end of the tutorial, you think like, yeah, I can play this game, and then you can't.
That's very interesting. So the problem that happened before, just so we're all on the same page, was that before it was like, now just use the overview to do this, and you're like, what the hell's an overview? And like all of the UI is there.
There's a screen of UI elements, and they're like the overview, and naturally somehow you're supposed to know, right?
Simply open the Neocom and set a skill in training. No, back up. I need about 3 more steps explained. Exactly. Yeah, so it's interesting because so boredom, but got through it understanding it, versus overwhelmed. Yeah. Which one's better? Which one's worse? Hard to say.
That is hard to say. I think that the boredom aspect is it's bad that that's the first thing that people are introduced to, but it's good because it does show what's going on. However, they could try to make it a little bit more engaging. I think in the beginning, I think that the robot voice really does kind of put you off.
The thing is that boredom is a context of like, you have it under control, right? Like boredom is about your perception of the thing. So somebody who is struggling to understand what's happening for whatever reason, more than you were, may not be bored. All it takes is one slip of an information, and now you're overwhelmed because you have no idea what she's talking about. So it's definitely an interesting juggling act. So moving past the tutorial, though, you got into career agents. How did the career agents go?
So I first started with the industrial career agent, trying to think about mining, because the idea that I kind of had going into it with the limited knowledge that I had of the game, I was like, I want to build. I want to build and I want to gather, and like that's what my intention was in the game, not realizing the scale of the game. And so I was just, I don't know, that was my first thought process. So industry seemed like the right career agent to go with, and then going through that, they kind of give you a few different ships. They give you a little bit of information on how to do things, and then I was like, sweet, this is easy days. And then I got to a point where I had to wait for a ship to build, and I was like, oh well, I'll pick up the business career agent as well, do a little bit more on the side. And then I found that really fun. And then I did the combat agents, which were combat, which I actually love the combat in this game, so I can't stop playing it. And then one thing that really tripped me up was I came back and did the exploration one, and that gave very little information on how to actually scan. And that was where I actually relied on my chat to tell me, like, hey, this is the button that you actually need to push to scan properly. I was like, oh crap, okay.
Scanning is, like I've always said, like the problem is that it's hard to explain. Like ultimately it's done through video, which actually CCP just recently put in tutorial videos for scanning. Let me see real quick whether or not it's still as easily to access as I thought it would be. I believe that they're in the agencies. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, while you're looking that up, sorry, I guess you're going to give some instruction on how to do it. Sorry,
No. Let me make sure it's even there. So go ahead.
Okay. So I'll ask a question. So at what point did you go out of the game and Google something? When was the first time you Googled how the F do I do blah EVE Online?
So as far as being a streamer and playing this game, I haven't really had to. I think that's a really big part of streaming this game as opposed to playing it casually. With the viewer support, I've basically had an encyclopedia in my chat every time I stream this game.
Live Google, yeah,
absolutely. But if I didn't have chat to help me through things, I would have probably been Googling things during my first career agent, like trying to figure out interface or honestly what the commands were, because they didn't really make it obvious the options that you had in the way of controlling things. Like you have your hotkeys, like your control click, your W click for whatever you're going to do if you're orbiting or approaching or targeting. I was right clicking everything and selecting things, which arguably took a little bit longer, but it was the only way I knew how to do things. And then someone was like, there's a radial menu if you hold left click, and it blew my mind.
Excellent. Yeah. So someone in the audience basically said, I think it's a great sign by my main. He outsourced Google to chat. I thought that's a great line. Exactly what you did. All right. So Ash, what did you find?
I found that I couldn't find it, so that's interesting. No, they replaced the tutorial with it for like one patch, and now it's gone again. So maybe they're going to bring it back because it just said videos, but the only videos were scanning. So it could have been that they aren't quite done with that section yet, and they'll reveal it like in another month or two. But either way, or they'll never come back to it again. But either way, scanning's better to be learned from videos for sure. I did.
So go ahead then.
We did have a question that I wanted to. I had a question about the career agents because it didn't sound to you that you would have described the career agents as boring. Then is that correct?
For the most part, that is correct. I think that is because you knew the reward. I think so. Going into the career agents, when you're accepting their missions, they immediately tell you what you're going to gain from it. But beyond that, I felt like there was a lot more interaction because I had the full UI as well as still wasn't 100% sure on how to do things. So a lot of things were me trying to be intuitive or try to find the easiest way to do things. And because it was more given to me for the power, like the power of doing things, it definitely wasn't as boring. I could, however, I know it's stepping a little bit further forward, but I did the Sisters of Eve quest while I was doing the career agents, and there's a lot of fetch quests in that, which I did actually find kind of monotonous.
In which one? Sorry?
The Sisters of Eve.
Oh, the Sisters of Eve Epic Arc.
Yeah, you called it a fetch quest. That's an interesting. Go gather something and take it somewhere. Crap.
Well, it's a lot of traveling around. The Sisters of Eve Epic Arc is really designed to be kind of the grand tour of the cluster. It's designed to send you to each of the empires, get you to know each of them as you learn about like the rogue drones and all that kind of stuff. But it's somewhat successful. But what's interesting here is that like this does really showcase both the good thing about why new players that stream Eve end up being more successful than just your average new players, but also one of the bigger problems with Eve's new player experience, which is that you were successful because you didn't have to know even what to ask or anything. There was other people watching you and they knew what you were missing. And so they prompted you with information. You didn't go, how do I do this? I don't know. I bet you anything they were prompting you with things that you didn't even realize. You didn't know to ask about it. They're feeding you information. So what if somebody wasn't being fed that information?
It wouldn't. I would say if you're not being fed that information. So for instance, my wife had actually started playing a couple days after me. And from what I understand from talking to her, she's actually watched my stream and watched my VODs to kind of pick up where I was, just to figure out how to play the game. And then she'll often come to me and ask questions about, how something's done. And like, it's weird because I'm able to answer them with confidence, not because I, Googled it, but because I had chat to tell me and then experimented myself. Whereas if you didn't have that chat aspect, you would have you'd have a lot of Googling and not finding the right answers. Because if you look at something like Eve University, it's very, very informative, but a lot of times it's too informative. So that was one thing that I have looked at is my MOA. When I was trying to fire the turrets, I missed a lot. So I just Googled turrets, like Eve turrets, and I came across like full calculus equations on how to fire your turrets. And I was like, I just want to shoot. I don't know how to make myself shoot.
Right. Yeah. And that is one of the I often wish that Eve was a more learnable game through gameplay. But yeah, so, and somebody's pointing out that this is why people need corps. And yes, corporations with players are very good because they can give you directions, but that's still not the same as having people watching your stream. Because again, he doesn't know to ask. And this is to those people who have corps that are helping out new players. Keep this in mind. Your new players don't know what to ask. They don't know what's wrong. They don't even know what their mistakes were. They don't even know what's going on. And at the same time, you also don't want to tell them what they have to do. This is why, like in our Discord, if there's any problems, the first thing we do is, can you stream it? Because there's nothing quite like